Third grade, and welcome to topic 6 in math. In this topic, we're going to focus on connecting area to multiplication and addition. So we're going to look at different ways we can measure area and how we can use multiplication and addition to solve. So for our first lesson, 6-1, it's going to be about covering regions or covering a certain amount of space and figuring out how much we needed to cover that much space. Let's go ahead and watch our short video, and then we're going to get into our notes and our guided practice as well.
How do you measure area? Think about this question during the lesson. Emily made a collage in art class. She cut shapes to make her design. What is the area of this shape? Area is the number of unit squares needed to cover a region with no gaps or overlaps. A unit square is a square with sides that are each 1 unit long. A unit square has an area of 1 square unit. Here is the unit square for this lesson. Why do you need a unit square to find the area of a shape? You need to know the size of the square you are using to cover the shape. If your square is a different size, bigger or smaller, a different number of unit squares would cover the same area. How many unit squares cover Emily's shape? The exact count is the area of the shape.
So what you would do to find the area is you would count how many squares are shaded. So this is the shape that we have. It's kind of in the shape of the letter T. How many squares fit inside of it? So you're going to count each group, or there's another way that you can do it where you're going to cut this shape into 2 shapes. So you can cut it across here and cut it into 2 rectangles. So you'd measure the length and the width of this rectangle and then the length and the width of that rectangle and then add them. So you'd be using partial products that way as well. Let's go ahead and continue.
36 square units cover this shape. The area of the shape is 36 square units. To prevent losing your place while counting the squares, it may help you to number each square as you count. Is there a way to find the number of unit squares that cover Emily's shape without counting each one? Explain your thinking. You could divide the shape into a 3x8 rectangle and a 3x4 rectangle. To find the squares that cover the top rectangle, count 8 squares in each row. Then multiply by 3 rows to find 24 squares. To find the squares that cover the bottom rectangle, count 4 squares in each row. Then multiply by 3 rows to find 12 squares. 24 plus 12 equals 36. The area of Emily's shape is 36 square units. Sometimes you can estimate the area. You can combine partially filled squares to help you estimate full squares. First, count the number of full unit squares. There are 23 of them. Next, combine partially filled unit squares to help you estimate the number of full unit squares. About 27 unit squares cover this shape. The area of the shape is about 27 square units. Now you know how to find the area of a figure by counting the number of unit squares that cover that figure.
Great job!
Before we move on, I want to take a look at these 2 shapes briefly. Now, what they did when they split it and they were counting each group, think of it like an array. So we had 3 groups with 8 in each group for this top rectangle, And here we had 3 groups with 1, 2, 3, 4 in each group for this rectangle. So think of it like an array, and you guys are already familiar with arrays. Now, when they were counting the shape over here, because they're estimating, the ones that are almost completely covered, they counted them as a whole one. And then they took one like this one over here and this one over here as half plus another half to make a whole. And then they did the same thing down here. They did half plus another half to make a whole. So they had 2 halves here, 2 halves here, 2 halves here, and then 2 halves over here. So a half and a half made a whole, and another half and a half made a whole. So that made 2 whole from the ones that were not completely filled in, plus the ones that were completely filled in. So when they're estimating, you're not going to be able to get an exact answer, especially for shapes like this, where they have curved edges, because they don't fill up that entire unit square. So let's go ahead and take a look at our notes and our guided practice for this lesson. So the vocabulary that you want to know is the word, first we have the word area. Remember, we said area is the number of unit squares that you need to cover a region. When I say region, I'm talking about, a space or a shape with no gaps and no overlaps. So you can't have 2 of them on top of each other. You have to have them fill as much of the shape as possible without leaving any empty spaces and without any of them on top of the others. A unit square is a square with sides that are each 1 unit long, whatever unit you're using. 1 inch long, 1 centimeter long, 1 yard long, 1 millimeter long. It doesn't matter. It's just 1 on each side. And it has an area of 1 square unit. So if you're using inches, you would have 1 square inch. If you were using centimeters, you would have 1 square centimeter, and so on. So over here, this is 1 square centimeter approximately. So I would write it as 1 square centimeter, or 1 cm is the abbreviation for centimeter, and the little 2 above it means squared. Now, sometimes, just like we were talking, you need to estimate the area. You do this by combining the partially filled squares, the ones that only have part of them filled in. You put them together to find out about how many full squares you can make. So we're going to find the area of a couple shapes together. Now, to find the area of a rectangle or a square, that's usually easy, right? We just count, we'll think of it like an array. So we have 1, 2, 3. So this is 3 on this side. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5 on this side. Now we know how to use area models to find the area of a shape. So the area of this shape is going to be 3 times 5, which is 15. So this is going to be 15 square units. And if you're not sure, you can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, if we're working on a shape like this, that's kind of difficult to count, right? Either there's a lot of squares that we need to count, or it's kind of cut out differently where we can't just multiply the length by the width to find the area. We can cut that shape. So I can cut this, and I can either cut it up right here to separate this side from this side, or I could cut it across right here and extend this line so it'll be a rectangle up here and a rectangle up here. Either way, you're going to find the same answer when you combine those partial products, because remember, we're not adding in anything extra. We're not taking anything out. So I think what I'll do is I will continue this line up this way. So I'm going to cut it. So now that I have cut my shape into 2 different shapes, I'm going to use a color to separate them. So this is going to be the orange part. And this will be my light blue part. That way they're easy for me to separate and see. Now I'm going to treat these like different shapes. So I'm going to find the length and the width of this one to multiply. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side. So this is a square, right? So to find the area, I need to do 4 times 4. Now for this one, this is a separate shape. Remember, I'm treating it like a separate shape. So let's count the length of this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is 6. And then down this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is a rectangle, right? There are different lengths on each side. So to find the area of this one, I need to do 6 times 7. So 4 times 4, we know is 16. 6 times 7 is 42. Now I found the partial areas, right? The partial products. So now I need to do 16 plus 42. 6 plus 2 is 8. 4 plus 1 is 5. So 58. This is going to be 58 square units. Now you have to write square units when you're talking about area. That's very important. So first I cut my shape. I found my partial products inside of each shape. I added my partial products together to find the whole area. So just like we did with this one, we multiplied the length times the width. 3 times 5 gave us 15. We didn't need to do any cutting on this one because it was already a rectangle and that was easy for us. So 15 square units. So this was 5 on one side and 3 on the other. Now for this one, this other shape, we need to estimate, right? Because it doesn't cover whole squares. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar process to what we saw in the video. So I'm going to go ahead and color in the ones that are completely covered or completely shaded, okay? So I'm going to find a light color that I can use. Let's see, we'll use that light color. So a light blue. Now we know these are all full. This is full. Those are full. Let me actually use something that's more noticeable so that you guys can follow along with me. So I'm kind of just tracing out all of the parts that are pretty much full squares. Okay. So all of those ones inside here, these are all full squares or mostly full squares. Remember, we're estimating. So we have 1, 2, 3. So let's do what they said in the video and let's try numbering. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. Oops. This one was 42. That's 43, and this one's 44. So we have 44 that are whole. Now we do have some that are only halfway full or kind of halfway full. So I'm going to color those in orange. Are they exactly half? No, probably not, right? But we're estimating. We don't need an exact answer. So remember, when you put together two halves, those make a whole. So these together will make a whole piece. These together will make a whole piece. These will make a whole piece, and these two will make a whole piece. So if we got to 44, this one out here will be 45, 46, 47, 48, right? Because we put two pieces together to make a whole one. So we'd already reached 44 over here, 45, 46, 47, 48. So our area is going to be 48 square units. So remember, when we're working with shapes that don't have clean edges, right? They can't be broken up into squares or rectangles. Sometimes we have to estimate. And when we estimate, we're not going to have the exact answer. So this is not 48 square units. This is about 48 square units, right? We are estimating. It's an approximate answer. So we found one whole by just multiplying the sides to find the area, just like the area models we've worked with before. We've taken another one where we've broken it apart. We've used our distributive property. So 4 and 6, that means this whole length of this side was 10, right? We broke it apart into a 4x4 square and then a 6x7 rectangle, and then found the partial areas, combine them to find the whole areas, and make sure you are writing square units. If you know what unit you're using, then you're going to put the name of that unit. So if you're measuring with inches, you would say square inches. If you're measuring with centimeters, you would say square centimeters or centimeters squared. Either one works. Now let's take a look at our guided practice. So for the first question, it says, how do you know the area of the octagon is 7 square units? So let's do what we did before. Let's count how many whole ones we have. So over here, they showed you that one square, if you cut it in half diagonally, you have 2 triangles in it. So you can count every set of 2 triangles is going to be a whole square. So let's color in the whole squares. So we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 whole squares. And then we have a couple that are only half. So if it's half, we need to put 2 of them together to make it whole. So these 2 make a whole and these 2 make a whole. So we had 5 whole plus these 2 make 1 and those 2 make 1. So 5 plus 2 gave us an area of 7 square units. So I know the area is 7 square units because the area, there are 5 whole squares, right? And 4 half squares in this triangle shape. So if I put 2 halves together, they make a whole. So this makes 1 whole and this makes 1 whole. 5 plus 2 is 7. So my area is 7 square units. For number 2, it says, your question is asking, let me back. Explain how finding the area of a shape is different from finding the length of a shape. So the area is all of the space that's inside of a shape or a region. The length is only the measurement of one of its sides. It doesn't tell you how much. So remember, think of area as how much you can fit inside of it. The length is just how long one side is. It doesn't tell you anything about how much fits inside because you can't use length by itself to figure out area. Now for numbers 3 and 4, it said find the area of these shapes. So this we can see is a regular shape. This one, we see it cutting across different squares. So this one, we're going to have to estimate to find the answer. Now for this one, let's count how many square units it is down, or how many units it is down and how many units across. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to be 4 units down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 units across. So I'm just counting how many squares. Remember, you can treat this like an array. 4 times 5. So what does 4 times 5 equal? We know 4 times 5 is equal to 20. So the area is equal to 20 square units. Now you have to write this. This is very important. If you forget to write square units on your answer will actually be incorrect, because then you're not talking about area anymore. You're just giving me a number. Now for this one, it's a little bit more tricky, right? Because it doesn't cut across any of the squares evenly. So we're going to do what we did before. Let's color our whole squares. So we know this one is whole, this one is whole, and that's pretty much it, right? Now we're going to see how many partial squares we have. Well, we can say this one is mostly whole, right? We're estimating. And then we can put this one with this part together and say that's one. We can take this one up here and put that one over there and say that's one. Again, it's not exact, you know, and then you can tag this one with that little piece. It's not going to be exact. So you have 3 whole ones plus, we'll say about 2 that we made out of the halves. So we put those together and we put these 2 together. And that gave us 5. So our area over here is going to be about 5 square units. So we said about 5 square units because it's not exact, it's an estimate. We're giving it our best guess. So these are different strategies that you can use to find area for different shapes and how to measure using different units. Now, sometimes one of the things that you need to remember is your unit square. If you're using a large unit square, you're going to need less of them to cover an area. If you're using a small unit square, you're going to need more of them to cover an area. So think about it, if you're using a small square, like one of the squares on this side, to cover an area, or if you're using a big square that measures maybe 5 of those on each side. The larger ones take up more space, so you need fewer of them to cover a region. The small ones take up less space, so you need more of them to cover a region. That's it for our notes on lesson 6-1 covering regions. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you guys have an amazing day, 3rd grade. Take care. Bye-bye.